Hey David, how you doing?
Well, I'm fine. How are you?
Very nice, thank you.
So, collaboration.
Yeah, I work for the Digital Library Federation, which represents about 60 research libraries. It includes academic libraries and public libraries, and including the Library of Congress. And we've been talking a lot about what we call in shorthand macro solutions. So how to work together above your institution. So letting go a little bit of that institutional ego and trying to find shared problems to work around. So the idea is by working together on shared problems and trusting people to work on something, by having that collaboration where you have to have the collaboration to provide that service that you might have had locally owned and managed, it allows you to free up resources, both personnel and budgetary.
So what sort of shared problems?
Well, I think a really good example is the HathiTrust. I mean, that was a shared problem of digital preservation. All these people were building digital collections, but as far as really solid digital preservation, to build those infrastructures individually across each of those libraries was very intensive. And as far as expertise building, a lot of people didn't have that expertise. So that's how HathiTrust came around. They decided to build this one infrastructure that their partners could rely on. So by doing that, it freed up personnel and budget money to concentrate on some other things at home. But at the same time, what's really great about HathiTrust, they're able to do some other things as part of this collective response, like the copyright management system, like, what was the other thing? They're actually growing expertise in digital preservation by having those partners contribute individual personnel hours to contribute to that idea of solving the digital preservation problem and to a larger whole instead of trying to tackle it individually, locally. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. In addition to, so that's an example of one that is working. What's an example of one that we should be doing, but our parochial, ego-driven concerns keep us from doing well enough?
I think a really good example was just highlighted in an OCLC research report. It was called Crowdsourcing the Library, and it's around the idea of combining that digital preservation aspect of the HathiTrust with regional legacy print archives. So it's actually crowdsourcing in a way. You're managing print collections. So what they've done, they did it like a case study of Recap, which is a New York-based legacy print archive, which is a shared print repository, and they compared it to the NYU Bopes Library and then the holdings within HathiTrust. And what they found out is that about 30%, there's a 30% rate of duplication of what's in Hathi and what's in the shared digital print storage. And when they extrapolated some of this stuff out using WorldCat data, they figured out that within the ARL or Association of Research Library community, there's enough duplication. It's an average of 30% duplication per library, and that those libraries could save, I think it's the equivalent of 35,000 linear feet, or I want to say it's 46,000 square feet, assignable square feet that they could save if they moved those collections to a shared print storage, which translated to $500,000 to $2 million per year annually that they could save in their budgets. And there was a recent Ithaca study that said not a lot of people participate in those shared print archives because it brings up, we traditionally, when we measure quality of these research libraries, it's numbers of collections and what we hold in-house. So that is a conflict point between what we have and then trying to do a collaborative shared environment. So we don't have a metric for sharing or collaborating. And I was talking to somebody, I said, wouldn't it be great if we had a metric instead of counting how big our budgets are, how many books we have? Could we have a metric that has a really good ratio of how much money do we spend per resources provided? So the more resources provided per budget dollar, the more efficiencies we achieve there. Could that be a higher metric of quality for our research libraries instead of just counting big budget, big collection? So that's an example, I think, of where we could achieve some great economies of scale, but we're just not doing because the way we measure our values traditionally keep us from doing that. I think by having these types of metrics, it actually encourages us to compete instead of collaborate.
So are there other considerations in this particular example about the availability of the books and the consolidation of a distributed set of archives into a single unfire-proofed, high volatility building that.
Well, it's that idea of building trust. You know, what is that service layer? What do you sign on to? I think a lot of times they can get the books within 24 hours. A lot of the books that were moved to an offsite storage were low use volumes, things that probably never circulated or only had low circulation data associated with them.
And libraries are moving to off storage. Many of them are. I know Harvard is for sure. So.
Absolutely, and I think a recent poll of university deans and provosts said that they didn't see the need of actually building more library space there on campus, but would actually consider shared offsite storage. So that's one of the things that we were thinking about. I really recommend that report from OCLC because they said it would take a really small network of print providers to do this, to actually, between building that network and HathiTrust, you could have almost 70% duplication between all these collections. So.
Do you think libraries are particularly sort of unused to collaborating, or is it just the typical thing in our culture?
I think we're used to collaborating as long as we can maintain some sort of identity credit. I mean, I think the ILL system is a really good example of how we have collaborated to a successful mean, but we were able to collaborate and still maintain this institutional identity of I've done X. It's really thinking about how your library works within that ecology of your campus. You know, really being in tune of what are those things that make your university or your communities distinctive and really feeding into those needs, and then how your library fits into the larger library ecology. So it's, and it really boils down to trust and having the courage that what you provide is a unique, distinctive service, and then trusting in your partners to provide those gaps where you're not the best. And I think we have a hard time saying we're not the best in everything. So it's a little bit of a pride ego situation maybe. So.
Have you noticed that we're in Amsterdam?
It's awesome, isn't it? It's great. Yes, I have noticed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.